It's time now for a look at the latest in local news. In the news, the Wayne County Board of Education held two meetings on Tuesday. The first, a call meeting at 5:30 to discuss personnel, make a decision on who the interim school superintendent will be. After a closed-door session, they came back and announced that acting superintendent Janet Collins will be named interim school superintendent effective now through September 17th. Then their former CFO, Tony Williams, will be the interim school superintendent from September 18th through June 30th of 2025. Here was the vote taken Tuesday after the executive session.
Board of Education has voted and decided to, hadn't voted yet, but we decided we're going to name Miss Jana Collins our interim superintendent from today's date, the 27th of 24 through 9/17 of 24. At that point in time, she will revert back to her assistant superintendent job, and Miss Tony Williams will be our interim superintendent from 9/18/24 through 6/30 of 25. So I'm going to make that in the form of a motion. Second. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call for the question.
Mr. Harris?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Yarborough?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Wise?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Daniel?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Mosley?
Yes, ma'am.
And again, the vote unanimous. After the vote, board member Sharon Daniel told the audience that Janet Collins really didn't want the interim school superintendent tag, was comfortable going back to assistant superintendent. Bruce Harris says the board is in a good place moving forward and that they need to fix some problems. All board members congratulated both Ms. Collins and Ms. Williams, and then Judge Vi Bennett sworn in Ms. Janet Collins as the acting school or the interim school superintendent. Moving on to the school board meeting at 6 p.m. A lot of people on hand representing the agricultural community, on hand speaking under public participation, asking the board to go back to revision 1 when it concerns the ag building and to look after the ag and ROTC projects. The board voted to rescind last meeting's actions on both facilities and approve new proposals. Before the vote, here was Todd Wise talking about a meeting he had with people who were involved in the agricultural program.
It was a phenomenal meeting. Let me start off by saying that. Everybody supports the ag community, and thank you for showing up tonight. This speaks volumes for y'all. I had spoken with Mr. Kirkland, and I believe that we had talked about in revision 2, the 16 or 18 pins was not adequate, but we can move it to 22 pins. That would be adequate. The whole concept that we met with was based off of value engineering. Without cutting square footage. So what we were looking at of keeping the square footage in line with what the agricultural community absolutely can live with that will benefit everybody was just stuff like the garage doors, the bricks that you build up on the outside of blocks. Could we cut that back? That's the reason we were looking at this capital outlay project, so we could have people that have a background in engineering, electrical, masonry, and all that, say, hey, A, B, and C, and D will work perfect. We don't have to get rid of our square footage, but this is where we'll save money at. We came up with a great project. We came up with a fantastic plan. So I want to assure y'all that we are not looking at cutting the square footage anymore, because we looked at the value engineering with the agricultural community, who did a phenomenal job of explaining things to me that I didn't know. So I believe there's a way that once we get the committee together, that we can all get this done to where it meets the needs of everybody, and that we're not cutting off A, B, C, and D. We're giving you exactly what you need. It was a top-end budget markets that we were looking at, of taking those down to where, like, you have block walls. And then they would turn around and put bricks on the side of block walls. So why do you need bricks on the side of block walls? Then they had the lighting system really elevated extremely high that should have never been that high. And these are the things that we talked about. So this is why that capital outlay committee is so important, to get the people that are experts in this arena. They can say, hey, this is what we need. This will work perfect. This square footage, bravo, we can handle that. And then you can have and then we can manipulate it around that and get the project started.
And Wise talked further, made it clear, saying, quote, I don't care about athletics this time. All I care about is the ag facility and the ROTC facility, end quote. The board agreed unanimously on their proposal for an ag center, but voted 3-2 to put the multiple purpose firing lanes back in the ROTC facility at a cost of $900,000. The firing range that the ROTC and Structure City didn't need. Todd Wise and Kerry Yarborough voted no. The board also moving forward with that advisory committee, looking for people with expertise to come together and help the board with future projects. Personnel always on the agenda. Here's the personnel that was approved on Tuesday. Certified recommendation: Amy Langley, Scriven Elementary School; Jesse Self, Arthur Williams Middle School. Classified transfer: Eileen Huber from Odom Elementary, SFS to Transportation. Classified recommendations: Kenesha Barnes, James E. Bacon Elementary, SFS; Rubens DeLaura, Transportation; Providencia Figueres, James E. Bacon Elementary; Danny Fussell, Transportation; Ron Sweat Jr., Odom Elementary; and Malachi Young, Jesup Elementary. We'll be back with more news after this word from our sponsor, the commercial messages, so please stay tuned. Other news: closing arguments are scheduled this morning in Courtroom C in the case State of Georgia v. Landis Paul Brown, who's facing murder charges in the February 3rd, 2023 shooting death of Zachary Johnson, which occurred at the 800 block of Community Circle off Rainier Road. Sheriff's Department called that morning at 11 a.m. found the body of Zachary Johnson lying in a wooded area outside a shed where the shooting took place. This entire incident, they said, occurred in about a period of 20 minutes, and Landis Paul Brown had been smoking meth for 3 days straight when he arrived at the shed. The defendant, Landis Paul Brown, is claiming self-defense, while the state claims it's cold-blooded murder of an unarmed man. State's case being presented by Assistant DA Elizabeth Presley, while the defense attorney is Arnold Regis from Atlanta. Both the state and defense have rested their case as far as witnesses and testimony. On Tuesday, the defense opted not to put defendant Brown on the witness stand and also did not call any witnesses to testify in the case. The majority of Tuesday's testimony was spent showing the jury a 2-hour and 58 interview conducted by Wayne County Sheriff's Officers Bruce Williams and David Stallings with the defendant after the defendant turned himself in after being on the run for several days. In the interview, the defendant tells the officers that this was a self-defense shooting, and for 3 hours is adamant that Zachary Johnson was the aggressor in the shed, that Zachary Johnson hit him as soon as he entered the shed, that Zachary Johnson would not let him leave the shed despite several attempts by Brown to leave the shed. Brown says Johnson wanted his pistol, demanded that Brown hand it over to him, but Brown stated that Johnson had just hit him minutes earlier and he felt that if he gave Johnson his pistol, that he would use it to shoot him. Brown refused to give up his pistol, tells officers that Johnson stood up, lunged at him with a hammer in hand, and fearing for his life, shot Zachary Johnson. During the interview, officers tell Brown that his story simply does not concur with the photos of the deceased and doesn't concur with the coroner's report. Officers do not believe that Johnson was standing when he was shot, but sitting down. Brown sticks to his story through the entire 2 hours and 58 minutes. He does tell officers that he probably made a big mistake by leaving the scene. Brown admits it doesn't help his self-defense story. Brown says he should have stayed, but he didn't know who was allies with Johnson in that shed, and he just had to get out of there and clear his head. Also, during the interview, the officers have Brown draw a diagram of inside the shed and initial where everyone was standing at the time of the shooting. After seeing the interview, defense attorney Regis asked for a copy of that drawing, to which the judge, Anthony Harrison, said the defense was entitled to. Assistant DA Presley said she didn't have one. Officer Williams also did not have one and didn't know if one existed. The judge said, quote, "Well, you better find it by tomorrow," end quote. An update late yesterday afternoon, that diagram has been located. Medical examiner also testified Tuesday. She did the autopsy, told the jury a single gunshot wound to the left arm, which entered the chest cavity, did extensive damage to the victim's lungs and heart, no exit wound, and the medical examiner explained that he bled out and that gunshot wound was the cause of death. Several in the shed that evening testified in court, and a couple backed up the defendant's story. They state Zachary Johnson was the aggressor and simply was wrong that day in the shed. Again, the defendant is claiming he feared for his life. This was the third encounter between the two men. One took place in jail in the shower, in which Brown says Johnson broke his ribs, but he never reported that incident to anyone, saying he simply didn't want any trouble. Once again, the jury has the task of deciding, was this a justifiable shooting or is it murder? And they'll begin deliberations after listening today to the closing arguments, which begin at 9 a.m. this morning in Wayne County Courtroom C. WIFO film will be at the courthouse. We'll have a full report, and if we get a verdict, we'll have that for you tomorrow here on Thursday's newscast. We'll be back with some final news notes after this word from our sponsor, the commercial messages, so please stay tuned. Final notes in the news: tomorrow night at the KK Gold Theater, a special event entitled Wayne's Got Talent, as the local hospice and Boys and Girls Club have joined forces for this event. Tickets are just $10, and the show begins tomorrow night at 6:30. Here's a list of the contestants in the event: Allie Flederman, Alyssa Lee Johnson, Bailey Bryant, Braxton Westbury, Bristol Massara, Linda Johnson and Patricia Bergens, the Babes in Blue, Crystal Keith, Macarius Williams, Riley Godwin, and Robert Thornton. Again, all this taking place tomorrow night at the high school auditorium. Tickets, once again, just $10. If you need ticket information, call Kylie McGregor at 912-432-9339. Wayne County Homecoming is still several weeks away, but the homecoming contestants have been selected at Wayne County High School. Following young ladies at Wayne County High School are in the homecoming court: Bella Beasley, Larson Chan, Jada Dent, Messiah Frazier, Vanna Lamb, Cadence McIntyre, Adeline O'Neill, Katie Sellers, Gracie Velosin, Anaya Wallace, Addie Williams, Brinsley Williamson, Satavia Wingard, Aria Woodcock, Azaria Wright, and Tristan Yawn. Again, our congratulations to those young ladies again selected for this year's Wayne County's homecoming court. And the Chamber of Commerce has an event coming up on September 5th at Coastal Pines Technical College entitled Brew and Build, Creating Success for Your Business One Cup at a Time. It's tailored for small businesses. The session takes place September the 5th from 8:30 to 10 a.m. Once again at Coastal Pines Technical College. Cost is $15 for Chamber members, $30 for non-members. The Chamber asks that you pre-register by August 29th. Simply call me the Chamber at 912-427-2028. And that's going to do it for the latest in local news. Sports comes your way in a few minutes. Bob Morgan, have a great day.